to view on the Council's website. To ask IT colleagues to please start the recording. Thank you. Aileen, could I ask you to call for the swearing and to make any apologies, please?
Good morning, members. Can I get you to confirm your attendance and I call your name, please? Councillor Barton.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor McGee.
Yeah.
Councillor Friel.
I'm here, Aileen, thank you.
Councillor Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Sangstan.
Here, thank you.
Councillor Mabin.
Present. Good morning.
Councillor Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Lennox.
Morning. Here.
Councillor Crawford.
Yeah.
Councillor Watts.
Good morning, I'm here.
I've got apologies from Councillor Filson, Councillor Hogg.
I'm here, thank you.
And Councillor Kyle.
Here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aileen. So members, we're going to move on to item 1 on the agenda, and that is any declarations of interest. There's no one in the room, no one online. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 2 on the agenda, and that is the hearing procedure. I'm going to ask Aileen to talk us through that.
Morning, members. We've got 2 hearings scheduled this morning. The process for that is that the planning officer will give details of the application. Objectors will then have the opportunity to present their objections to the committee, and they will get the opportunity to ask questions of the objectors on their submissions. The applicant and or their agent will then get the opportunity to speak to the committee, and you can ask questions of them after that. At that point, the hearing will close and the planning officer can give appropriate clarification on any issues raised during the hearing, and then you will move to determine your decision.
Thank you very much, Aileen. So members, it's item 3 on the agenda, and that is planning application number 25/0127/PP. And it's the proposed lateral extension of Tincorn Hill Quarry to the north and east and deepening of the extended excavation at Tincorn Hill Quarry B743 from the U79 Brockler to U724 Garpole, and that's in Sorn, East Ayrshire, by Breedon Trading Limited, and that's in pages 5 to 51 of your papers. So members, as Aileen said, we do have a hearing for this application, and I've proposed 5 minutes for each objector and 15 minutes for the agent, if we're all happy with that. Thank you very much. So I'm going to open the hearing procedure at this point and hand over to Barry Douglas, who will take us through the presentation.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. Just before I run on to the presentation, I just want to point out a correction at paragraph 107 in the report. This is in relation to the contribution that the quarry operator makes to the Tincorn Hill Quarry Fund. The paragraph states that the operator makes a contribution of £5,000 per year to the quarry fund, and it is recommended that this continues should planning permission be granted. This amount isn't correct, however. Under the Section 75 agreement at the moment, the operator makes a £10,000 monetary contribution to the fund and an in-kind payment of £5,000 per annum. So that's in materials. The operator has requested, following a meeting with the quarry fund, that the contribution is amended to £20,000 per annum as a monetary contribution only, removing the in-kind contribution. As stated in the report, this is not a material consideration though, and it is noted that this has just historically been in the Section 75 agreement, and it is recommended this continues, but as amended. So I'll run through some of the plans and photos of the site before moving on to the main considerations and the recommendation. So this plan shows the location of the site. It's located roughly 1.8 kilometres to the northeast of Sorn. So this is Sorn here, and the quarry is outlined in red. You can see the existing quarry, which is outlined, non-contoured area and extension area to the north and east. And this area is where there are porta cabins and wheel wash, etc., and access down to the B743. This is the site as existing. The solid red line showing the application boundary, the orange line showing the extraction area that's proposed. The current planning permission obviously operates in this area. So this is the current extractive area. It's a fairly simple, reasonably simple rectangular area. The current planning permission allows extraction until 2032 and further working to a level of 252 metres above sea level. So at the moment, this area of the quarry is worked down to 252 metres, and they're currently working in an eastwards direction into this area. This plan shows the closest residential properties. Nether Shield is the closest to the application site in this location. This is 135 metres away from the access point. Blackside is the closest to the extraction area for the extension, and that's at 590 metres from the application site at the closest point. This plan shows environmental designations in the area. So the Muirkirk Uplands, Triple SI, and Muirkirk and North Lowther Special Protection Area is the area which is hatched in blue to the north. And the local landscape area is the area which is in green, the horizontal green lines. And also, which isn't shown on the plan, the site is within the Blood Moss local nature conservation site, as is the existing quarry. So this is a Blood Moss moor here. And the boundary of it sort of meets with the, roughly with the boundary of the SPA. So moving on to the phasing plans. This shows phase 1, and this would basically in this phase, the existing quarry would continue to be worked and the lateral extension area would be established, with topsoil being cleared to form a bund around the edges, and the extension would be worked at 267 metres above sea level at a bench of 267 metres above ordnance datum. And then this is phase 2, so this is the working of the extension area to 252 metres, which would match the existing consented level for the quarry as it is just now. And phase 3, this is where the eastern half of the entire area would be worked down to a level of 222 metres above ordnance datum. Dewatering at this stage will be required as it is below the water table. And then in phase 4, the final phase, this would extend to the western extent of the quarry. This showing the restoration plan for the site. A water body would be left on site with marginal planting, floating islands and creation of habitats, and it's intended that this will enhance the biodiversity of the area. This plan shows the HGV routing, which is currently approved for the quarry. You can see that the HGVs, when they're travelling to the west, go through Sorn and are required to turn left if they're coming from the quarry, turn left at the new bridge and towards Catrin. If they are, there's different requirements depending on if it's contract traffic, if it's travelling to Killach and so on. And this was as a result of when Killach, the asphalt plant and concrete plant was operating at Killach. But basically for HGVs which are laden, the basic requirement is for them to come from the A76 through Catrin and then down into Sorn and turn right towards the quarry. And if they're coming from the quarry, is to go through Sorn, turn left at the bridge, up the hill and turn left and down towards Auchinleck. Just moving on to some photos of the site. So this is the access point from the B743. You can see the signage there. And looking up the access road to the quarry, which is basically behind those trees here. And looking up towards the quarry again, it's not really visible from the road. The only part of it which is really visible is a stockpile which can be seen from the road. So the quarry is behind this line of trees. And this is looking into the quarry, into the floor. This is the sort of consented level of 252 metres that's being worked at the moment. And again, looking into the quarry. And again, this is at the higher level, which is being worked at the moment. Another view looking in. And this is looking out of the quarry into the area for the proposed extension. So this is looking roughly north to, this is Blackside End Hill, which you can almost see. Obviously the lower parts of it, the rest of it's covered in mist. Blackside Farm is, a Blackside House is located behind this bank of trees here, or roughly in that area. And panning round slightly to the east, the extension would be in this area. The land to the north does slope down towards the Harley Burn, and the boundary would be roughly 15 metres away from the Harley Burn. And again, just looking out of the site into the extension area. And again, you can see it's rough moorland grazing land. And this is stockpile I was talking about. So this is looking down into the parking area and down towards where the B743 is. And looking along the boundary, the quarries on the left-hand side and the extension area would be to the right-hand side. And looking back the way towards the quarry where the existing bunding is. An extension would be within the area that's the photograph's been taken from. And looking along the boundary again with the extension to the right-hand side of the fence. And again, looking back towards the quarry and the bunding. And again, along the fencing. So that's all the photographs. So I'll now move on to summarise some of the main issues within the report. The principle of the proposal is considered in pages 16 and 17 of the report. The proposal would extend and deepen an existing established quarry to allow it to operate for another 50 years. It is proposed that the mineral would be extracted at the same rate as it currently is, which is 350,000 tonnes per year over a 50-year period, including the existing reserves. This would allow for the extraction of a total of 15.5 million tonnes of aggregate. This would provide a long-term security over the provision of hard rock minerals, which are an essential construction aggregate. The proposal will therefore support economic growth as well as support direct and indirect employment in the area. Impacts and matters in relation to the extension of the quarry are considered in the report. Paragraphs 49 to 56 consider impacts on homes, communities and sensitive receptors. These include noise, traffic, blasting and dust impacts. In relation to noise, it has been assessed in the EIA report that the recommended noise limit of 55 decibels as an average can be achieved with the implementation of inbuilt mitigation measures such as the bonding. Noise levels would also be monitored and secured by condition. With blasting, it is recommended that vibration would be, it's predicted that vibration would be well within acceptable levels that are recommended within Planning Advice Note 50. Traffic is also considered more generally in paragraphs 57 to 62. Given that extraction would continue at the same rate under any new planning permission as it currently does, there would be no increase in HGV traffic as a result of the proposal itself. It would, however, continue for the 50-year lifetime of the quarry. This is considered to be acceptable, noting that ARA do not object to this and recommend that the existing approved traffic routes to the west are maintained. ARA do, however, request that the submission of and approval of a traffic management plan, which would include a cap on the daily number of HGV movements that would need to be agreed. Impacts on biodiversity and nature are considered in paragraphs 63 to 74. This includes impacts on designated areas, including the Special Protection Area and SSSI. Overall, no unacceptable impacts are found, subject to the implementation of mitigation measures, including a habitat management plan, measures to protect species and birds, etc. This takes account of a response from Nature Scot, which is of no objection. There are not considered to be any unacceptable impacts on the historic environment as considered in paragraphs 75 to 79. This includes impacts on the setting of Blackside End Cairn, which is a scheduled monument, noting there is no objection from Historic Environment Scotland. Water impacts are considered in paragraphs 80 to 87. This includes flood risks. impacts from dewatering and water quality. All are considered to be acceptable, subject to mitigation. It is noted that the Ayrshire Rivers Trust, although not objecting, do raise concerns about impacts on the quality of water entering the Bainthead burn and the subsequent impacts on aquatic species. It should be noted that monitoring is currently undertaken by the operator and by SEPA. Water quality results for the current discharge are included in the EIA report and are in line with the limits set by SEPA. Taking account of this and that SEPA have not raised this issue in their response, further measures as requested by the Ayrshire Rivers Trust to monitor aquatic species is not considered to be necessary beyond those currently recommended. Landscape and visual matters are considered in paragraphs 91 to 96. Given the limited views to the site and the influence that the quarry has on the currently has on the landscape, it is not considered that the proposed extension would be unacceptable in landscape or visual terms. Restoration proposals are considered to be acceptable on the basis that they will provide for a diversity of habitats. A financial guarantee will continue to be put in place with yearly reviews in order to secure restoration. Overall, the quarry extension and deepening is considered to be acceptable. As previously noted, it will provide for a further 50-year provision of construction minerals, which is to the benefit of economic growth and the provision of employment. Impacts have been considered and are all found to be acceptable, with mitigation measures being secured where necessary. There are no objections from consultees with the exception of the Sorn Community Council, and this is summarised in paragraph 28 of the report. The Council's independent mining consultants have also reviewed the proposals and agree that no significant environmental impacts are identified. A total of 68 representations and objections to the application were received, and these are summarised in paragraph 33. In conclusion, the proposed quarry extension and deepening is considered to accord with the relevant provisions of the development plan and the material considerations and there are no material considerations which would justify refusal. It's therefore recommended that the application be minded for approval with conditions as listed on pages 36 to 50 and subject to revised consolidated Section 75 agreement on similar and updated terms to the existing legal agreements in place as summarised in paragraph 121. This includes for a revision of the time of entrance to the site to allow for HGVs to enter the site from 6:30 AM instead of 7 AM to allow for HGVs to park on the access road prior to loading. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mary. Members, we're now on to the part of the hearing where we'll be here for the objectors or their agents who will present their objections to the committee in support of their written objections. So, could I please invite Mr. Patrick Wiggins up to the lectern, please? Mr. Wiggins, so it's 5 minutes, and I'll probably give you a gentle reminder with 1 minute to go, just so that it gives you time to kind of summarise and wrap up. Just whenever you're ready, thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee and summarise our concerns. My name's Ian Skade. This is Patrick that you mentioned earlier. So I'm addressing the traffic issues. Breedon's own admission is that the HGVs are out of their control once they leave the quarry, and they don't think that's their problem, whereas we disagree. Now that applies to both their own Breedon transport and subcontractors that they bring in when they've got bigger orders. We can't cope. So what we're saying is someone is going to be killed. There's a body of evidence going back 9 years that proves this danger is real, and yet this committee is being asked to approve another 50 years of it. Well, a recent ARA speed check survey recorded 85% of the vehicles going through Sorn were speeding. The average extent of the speeding was 35% over the limit, equivalent to 27 miles per hour in the 20 zone and 40 miles per hour in the 30 zone. Parents and children walking to primary school along the Catherine Road, which has no pavements, are exposed daily to this danger. Breedon proposed 12 lorry movements per hour, 1 every 5 minutes, for the next 50 years. This is not a minor inconvenience. This is a predictable tragedy waiting to happen. Which brings us to corporate responsibility and liability. Breedon admit that they have no control over HGV drivers once they leave the quarry, yet under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 and the Corporate Manslaughter and Corporate Homicide Act 2007, responsibility cannot be shrugged off. If a fatal accident occurs, liability will not stop at the quarry gates. It will extend to those who permitted this expansion despite clear warnings. Long-standing complaints, a pattern ignored. Former footpaths up the hill towards Catherine were promised by Bar Construction 30 years ago, yet only 100 metres has been completed in 30 years. Complaints about unsafe quarry traffic appear in Sorn Community Liaison Group minutes since 2015. Residents have reported speeding, convoys, unsafe bridge crossings, damaged verges and curbs. This is not new, it is a 9-year pattern of negligence. 9 years of complaints, warnings, and nothing has changed. Why should we believe another 50 years will be any different? Scale of the objections. 68 objections from a village of 108 homes, that's 60% of households. If you scaled that up to Kilmarnock, there'd be tens of thousands of objections. This is the majority of the community speaking with one voice. Acknowledgement by authorities. The Ayrshire Roads Alliance acknowledges villagers' concerns and suggested an alternative route that would remove quarry HGVs from travelling through Sorn. Councillor Lennox spoke out at a recent August Planning Committee meeting, reporting that he was inundated with complaints from Sorn and Catherine Road, and he too suggested an alternative route to take quarry HGVs out of the village altogether.
That's just a gentle reminder, it's a minute to go, thanks.
These are not just residents' voices, they are echoed by elected representatives of professional bodies. It's not just Sorn. The T-junction between the Sorn to Catherine Road and the Catherine to Auchinleck Road has no sight lines in either direction. All vehicles have to creep out into the path of oncoming traffic to see if there's anything coming. The bridge. The listed bridge is already damaged by decades of quarry traffic. The route is not suitable for HGVs. The verges and curbs show extensive wear. The radius at the phone box corner is inadequate for HGVs. Any increase in traffic will exacerbate the danger and accelerate structural decline. I've got a whole list of 9 villagers' voices, but don't have time to go. I'm just going to quote it close. The villagers of Sorn have lived with quarry traffic for 30 years already. To approve another 50 years is to knowingly condemn this community to danger, fear and decline. Quarry HGVs are out of control. Breedon admit they cannot control them once they leave the quarry, and the evidence of risk stretches back 9 years. Even ARA and Councillor Lennox have suggested alternative routes. Please do not approve this expansion. It is an accident waiting to happen. If tragedy strikes, the responsibility will rest not only on the quarry, but with this committee. The whole pattern of recent applications is aimed at monetising the value of Breedon's balance sheet and Sorn Estate's finances. A village that was once described as a jewel in the crown of East Ayrshire and winner of the best wee village in Scotland for 3 years in a row is already on the internet as a ghost town. Approval of the current proposal will only accelerate this trend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Skade. So I think, is it Mr. Patrick Wiggins who's going to speak next? Oops, my apologies, Mr. Skade. I forgot to open up to members to see if there are any questions for you. Members? Councillor Kyle.
Just one question. You're talking about speeding. Have you done speed tests?
Came from a survey, a speed survey by ARA. And it's just 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Has the police done a speed test?
The police are going to do some one day when they've got the resources. They were at the last community council meeting and it was discussed.
Have they done a speed test lately?
No.
Thank you.
And there's any other questions for Mr. Skade? Nope, thank you very much, Mr. Skade. So again, can I invite Mr. Patrick Wiggins.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. First of all, I want to endorse what Ian has said to you today. This planning application has been hugely controversial in the village for a whole host of reasons, but traffic is absolutely a key concern for many. And that's been reflected in the objections that you have before you today, which have been made about the original application. And we feel that so many of those questions and concerns have not been answered in the latest version of the application. Secondly, I want to put on record that the community's disappointment that so many people with real concerns about the proposal have not been able to be here today, given the lack of notice for this meeting. I understand you have a letter from the Community Council requesting a postponement to allow more members of the community to attend. And whilst the minimum statutory notice may have been met, we do not feel that the meeting held in this way so quickly has actually worked in the spirit of facilitating genuine community engagement, particularly with the many concerns raised by such a substantial part of the community. We make this point particularly as this is a special meeting out with the normal planning cycle, making it even harder for residents to plan attendance. That said, what I want to focus on is the climate and net zero implications of the proposed 50-year extension. My concern is not just about local impacts, but also about how this decision fits with East Ayrshire's obligations under Scotland's net zero legislation and your own climate strategy. Scotland has legally binding targets of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2045. Local authorities are required to contribute to achieving that target, not only through their own operations, but by ensuring that developments in their area align with a net zero pathway. East Ayrshire's own strategy commits the whole area to net zero by 2045. That means every major development must demonstrate emissions minimisation, credible mitigation, and alignment with that trajectory. The applicant describes the quarry's emissions as minimal, but this is based on a relative comparison with a sector baseline that assumes the construction of new buildings and access roads. Because Tinkhorn Hill already has these, the calculation is reduced, making the quarry look slightly better than average by 1.6%. In absolute terms, however, the quarry will still emit around 69,000 tonnes of CO2 equivalent over its lifespan, about 1,385 tonnes per year. This is not minimal. To put it in perspective, that's the equivalent of annual emissions of around 25,000 households, or tens of thousands of transatlantic flights from Glasgow to New York. If you think of East Ayrshire's emissions as a budget that must reach net zero by 2045, then if you're giving consent to this development, where will you save the 69,000 tonnes of carbon emissions to balance it? Are these 69,000 tonnes really the priority use for that budget at this time? And crucially, these emission figures are not complete. They exclude downstream emissions from the use of aggregates in asphalt and concrete, nitrous oxide from blasting, carbon release from peat soils, and methane from proposed restoration watercourses. This matters in planning terms because your LDP policy CR2 requires a whole life greenhouse gas emission assessment and offset review. And what we have before us is a partial, not whole life assessment. LDP policy S1 requires minimization of emissions, yet there are no binding decarbonisation milestones, only speculative reliance on green electricity tariffs and possible biofuels. National Performance Framework 4 policies 1 and 2 give significant weight to climate mitigation. Granting a 50-year consent with no enforceable decarbonisation pathway undermines these policies.
Sorry, that's just gentle reminders, a minute left, thanks.
Sorry?
Just a gentle reminder, there's a minute
Yeah,
left.
okay. NP4 policy 33 on minerals supports extraction only where impacts are minimised. Here, impacts are presented as marginally better than a constructed baseline, but not minimised. The applicant seeks a 50-year consent, taking operations into 2070s, nearly 3 decades beyond Scotland's net zero deadline. The current permission expires in 2032. There is time to properly address these concerns and produce a whole life assessment of emissions and produce a review and mitigation plan. If the committee is minded to grant approval, then we urge you to consider a shorter consent. There is precedent for shorter consents. Other quarries in East Ayrshire and across Scotland operate under time-limited permissions, with reviews to ensure compliance and updated standards and planning conditions. A shorter extension, say 5 years, would allow the council to reassess compliance with all relevant planning policies and check whether the operator is delivering on decarbonisation, offsetting and restoration commitments. Furthermore, if the committee is minded to consent, I urge you to impose conditions, Section 35 obligations that require a genuine whole life greenhouse gas assessment, binding decarbonisation milestones, a credible offset hierarchy, and annual reporting of emissions and progress with corrective actions where missed, if targets are missed. Chair, just to finish, this is not just about one quarry, it's also about whether East Ayrshire can credibly claim to be on track for net zero by 2045. A 50-year consent without binding climate safeguards undermines that claim, and I would argue is not consistent with national and local planning policies and guidelines. I ask that you defer granting consent until these issues are addressed, and in the event that you wish to give approval, I ask that you reject the 50-year timescale and instead grant a shorter extension, 5 years, with enforceable climate and transport conditions. That way the council retains control, ensures compliance, and protects both our local environment and our shared climate obligations, while ensuring residents' concerns about HGV traffic are properly addressed and monitored. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Wiggins. So, Mr. Wiggins, we're going to open up for questions from members. Yep, Councillor Kyle.
When the quarry started, was most of the houses private or were the council houses? So people was buying ground to build a house individually. Was the quarry still operating when they put in for planning permission to build a house?
Well, to be honest, I can't answer that question because I mean I wasn't in the village at that time. But if the original, I think the original quarry dates back 30 odd years, isn't it? So at that time, I'd imagine most of the village would still have had a degree of social housing. But I'm not quite following the point of your question. Are you talking about new housing developments recently or historically?
So basically what you're saying is the quarry was going and people were buying property to build houses. They knew the quarry was there.
Well, there has been some, new build. I mean, in the lifetime of the quarry, I couldn't put a number on it because I'm not entirely sure when the different dwellings in the village were created. and how that stacks against the timeline of the quarry. But there will have been some, yes.
That's fine. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Kyle. Members, any further questions? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Buggins. If we just ask you to go back to the public gallery. So, members, we're now at the part of the hearing where we hear from the applicant or their agent in support of their application. And could I invite Mr. Donald Wilkins and Mr. Tom Lewis to the lectern, please? Thanks very much. So it's a total time of 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. My name is Donald Wilkins. I'm Breedon's Planning and Estates Manager for Central and Southern Scotland. I'm joined this morning by Tom Lewis, Director at Johnson Poole and Bloomer, who assisted in the preparation of the planning application. So quarrying operations at Tincorn Hill have been ongoing for about 30 years, as mentioned earlier. They were approved in their current form back in September 2007, albeit records suggest that quarrying started as far back as the 1800s at Tincorn Hill. As described on site during the visit last week, the mineral is worked through a process of drilling, blasting, crushing and then screening the rock into a variety of construction aggregates, ranging from high specification single-sized roadstone and concrete aggregates through to lower grade materials such as type 1. The site currently employs 10 full-time staff. However, in addition, the operation supports employment with a variety of roles, including haulage, sales, distribution, drilling and blasting contractors, mechanical fitters, engineers, and also management support such as finance, geology and planning. The quarry currently supplies between 300 to 350,000 tonnes of aggregates per year into the Ayrshire market area. The materials from the quarry are used in most forms of construction within the local area, such as road construction, maintenance, house building, renewables, electricity distribution, commercial and retail development. Local projects supported by the quarry in the past 12 months within the local area include the North Craigs housing development in Kilmarnock, the battery energy storage development located adjacent to the Kilmarnock South substation, and the Kilmarnock Football Club's training facility at London Road. The mineral reserves at the quarry are finite and are depleted as extraction progresses through the quarry. As it currently stands, there's approximately 3 to 4 years of remaining reserve left, and therefore in 3 to 4 years the quarry will close if those reserves are not replenished. The planning application seeks permission to extend the workings north and east, and also deepen the workings by a further 2 benches. This would replenish the reserves and allow production to continue. The annual rate of extraction and the method of working would, however, remain unchanged. The quarry is in a relatively remote location. Closest properties to the extension area are the cottages at Blackside to the north, 590 metres, and Nethershield Farm is 760 metres to the south of the proposed extension and 135 metres from the access road. As described in the committee report, the planning application is accompanied by an environmental impact assessment report, which has systematically assessed the environmental impact of the development, considering topics such as noise, vibration, ecology, landscape, the water environment, the historic environment, and climate change. The EIA report has been reviewed and assessed by the Planning Service, their independent consultants who specialise in minerals development, and by a variety of consultees, including SEPA, Nature Scot, and the Council's Environmental Health Service. No objections have been submitted by these consultees other than from Solent Community Council. Due to the local topography and relatively remote location of the site, direct impacts from the operation on residential amenity in terms of noise, dust, vibration and visual impacts are predicted to be very low and well below maximum thresholds stipulated within planning policy and guidance. Extensive ecology surveys of the site and surrounding habitat have been completed, and the EIA report concludes that the development's impact on ecological interests would be limited and not significant. Nature Scot has confirmed that they have no objection to the development, and just recently we've had a pair of peregrine falcons nesting in the quarry regularly and have successfully bred a number of times over recent years. There's no known sites of archaeological or historic environment significance within the site, and any indirect impacts are deemed acceptable by Historic Environment in Scotland. No potential significant impacts on the water environment are identified, and SEPA confirm they have no objections to the development. Now, in terms of transportation, no change in the current vehicle numbers is proposed. The output of the quarry would remain much the same as it has been. The Ayrshire Roads Alliance raised no objection to the development and recommend that HGVs travelling to and from the quarry continue to utilise the existing route, which extends from the B743 to the B713 and onwards to the A76. This route extends through the villages of Soane and Catrin. Breedon is fully aware of the concerns expressed by local residents with regards to lorries passing through the villages, and this has been discussed with residents during pre-application meetings and our regular community liaison meetings. The routes to and from the quarry are established public roads and carry a variety of vehicle types, including agricultural machinery, livestock transport, delivery vehicles and HGVs. It's understandable that residents feel strongly about this. However, the key planning consideration is whether the predicted number, frequency and pattern of HGVs can be safely and acceptably accommodated on the network. Based on the submitted evidence and the consultation comments from Ayrshire Roads Alliance, the conclusion is that they can. Now, an alternative routing option has been considered as part of the proposal. This involved directing HGVs eastwards from the quarry along the B743 and joining the A70, and then passing through Lugar and Cumnock before joining the wider regional routes. Now, this alternative was properly examined against a range of criteria. However, this alternative route option presented several disadvantages, including greater journey time and journey distance, increased greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles travelling a greater distance, greater wear on both vehicles and the public road, reduced ability to serve the established market of the quarry, and the transfer of impacts from one or two villages to other properties along the alternative route. After considering these factors, the eastern route was discounted, and the chosen route is therefore considered to be the most practical, most environmentally responsible and the least disruptive overall. Now, Breedon implement measures to control and manage impact of HGVs travelling to and from the site. These measures include a traffic light system at the egress of the quarry to manage a staggered departure from the site and minimise convoying through the villages. All loads are securely sheeted before departure from the site. Vehicles are required to utilise approved routes to and from the site. And Breedon also regularly brief drivers regarding the sensitivities when travelling through the villages. In addition, Breedon has committed to funding road improvement works designed to improve road safety along the B713. This was controlled within the previous Section 75. Breedon also make a financial contribution towards the maintenance of the road leading out to the A76. Moving beyond transport, the quarry has over many years contributed to the Tincorn Hill Quarry Fund. The fund is managed by a group of community volunteers and supports a wide range of community projects. These projects have included floral displays within Soane and Catrin, street furniture within Soane, improvements to the Soane Bowling Club, contributions towards the Catrin Renewables Hydro project, and improvements to the Auchincloy Community Hall car park. In addition, the funds have also supported a number of resurfacing projects. There was mention earlier regarding climate change. Now, obviously, climate change is high on the agenda, both for the council, but also for companies. In response, my comments is that the long-term nature of the permission that we're asking for enables Breedon to invest in the site. And we can invest in the site in a number of ways to try and bring our climate emissions down. They don't form part of this proposal as it currently stands, but I think it's important to understand that if we're to be granted, for example, a 5-year extension, that's not long enough for Breedon to invest in the site. We need a good long period of time of certainty of mineral to allow us to make those changes and the investments in the site. The other point to note is that it's important to ensure that there's a network of quarries dotted throughout Scotland. Now, this minimises transportation and obviously the greenhouse gas emissions that go with that. And we believe Tincorn Hill Quarry is strategically located within the Ayrshire market to provide that coverage. So in conclusion, the application represents a carefully considered and designed proposal that secures the continued operation of an essential local industry. The environmental impact assessment has been rigorously reviewed by independent experts and statutory bodies, and with the exception of the local community council, they are all satisfied that the extension can proceed without giving rise to significant environmental, residential or ecological impacts. The site's location, the nature of the proposed working arrangements and the mitigation measures already embedded within the quarry operations ensure that noise, dust, vibration, visual impacts and ecological effects remain low and well within acceptable planning thresholds. The continuation of Tincorn Hill Quarry is vital to maintaining reliable supply of the construction materials within the Ayrshire housing, infrastructure, energy and commercial sectors. These minerals would otherwise need to be transported from elsewhere. Whilst we recognise the concerns raised by residents regarding HGVs, ARA confirm that they have no objections to the continued use of the route. Notwithstanding, Breedon will continue to implement robust controls on vehicle behaviour while funding targeted improvements along the B713. Finally, our long-standing contribution to the Tincorn Hill Quarry Fund reflects our commitment to supporting the communities around us, and we're proud of the many local projects it has helped deliver. We believe the proposal strikes the right balance between protecting local amenity, supporting community interests, and securing an essential resource for the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. Is it only yourself that's speaking? Yeah. Okay, thanks. So at this point, I'll hand over to members for questions. So I've got Councillor McGee and then Councillor Sangster.
Aye, thanks, Chair. Earlier, objectors were talking about the traffic management plan, and the claim was that once the lorries leave the site, they're not under your control. But I'd suggest that's no correct, because it's your traffic management plan. So we'll say, for example, it's Davy Smith's lorries. If Davy Smith's no following your traffic management plan, it's up to you to say to Davy Smith, you're off the job. So just looking for some clarity on the traffic management plan and the overall responsibility. Thank you.
So running from Tincorn Hill, we'll have a mixture of HGVs. We'll have Breedon's own fleet, which we have lots of controls over. We have tracking devices within them where we can see exactly where they are, exactly how fast they've been travelling, any sharp braking, there's a huge amount of information that we can get from that. Where we have contractors, we have a little bit less control because we don't have that tracking information readily available to us, albeit we can probably go to the contractor and request that information. Quite often we also get collects, which is we're not sorting out the transport. People will arrive at the quarry looking to collect material. Those lorries we probably have a little bit less control over because we don't have that relationship. There's no contractual relationship in terms of the haulage of material. In terms of traffic management, we will ensure that they're following appropriate routes. We can respond to complaints if we can get a registration number and a time that they're noticed doing something inappropriate on the network, then we can investigate who that is, speak to them, issue warnings, or ultimately we can ban drivers from the site. So there are a lot of controls that we can put in place.
Councillor Saxton.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm curious about the funding that you provide, and how that came about. I'm assuming you have local residents that are involved in making decisions that impact on the community. And what sort of things? I mean, how much are we talking here? How much do you contribute? You say on an annual basis, and what sort of things are you contributing to? I understand this is maybe not a material consideration, but I'm curious about that. Thank you.
Yeah, so the Tincorn Hill Quarry Fund was set up 2006, 2007 as a result of our earlier planning application. It was set up really through the Section 75 agreement that was put in place at that point. There was a fund prior to that, I believe, although I don't know a huge amount of detail. So in its current form, that was set up in 2007. Currently, we contribute £10,000 per annum, and we also contribute £5,000 worth of goods and services per annum. So that's on top of so the fund gets £10,000 worth monetary contribution, and they also have a fund of in-kind, which effectively means if they need a supply of materials or if they need any asphalt laid down to improve surfaces, of a car park or a path, then that can be supplied. So the fund is controlled and administered by a trust, and that trust, I think there's 5 members. In addition to that, there's the community councils from Catrin and so on who are represented there. They meet once a quarter. They receive applications from community bodies, for example, the Soane Bowling Club, for funding, and they'll either fully fund projects or they'll partially fund projects alongside other forms of funding.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that it was mentioned earlier that we had the trust fund meeting about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and there was discussion during that whether or not the in-kind fund would be better. More flexibility, I suppose, added if that in-kind contribution was paid as a monetary payment. So rather than paying £10,000 and then having this separate fund, we're happy with that. We're agreeable to that. So what we've suggested is increasing the payments if we're granted planning permission up to £20,000, and effectively running the in-kind fund down to zero, spend the funds within that. And I think that would just give the community more flexibility in terms of the types of projects that they could support.
Thanks. Before I bring in Councillor Watts, I can ask a quick question about your blasting schedule. Just how many per annum do you go on? And is there any kind of neighbourhood, like close neighbour notification before you do the blasting?
Yeah. So each blast we will generate roughly between 30 and 35,000 tonnes worth of rock. So based on that, we've got about 10 to 12 blasts a year. It depends. Sometimes the blast panels are a little bit smaller, but probably, you know, maximum of 12 blasts a year, minimum probably about 8. So it'd be once a month to once every 6 weeks we would blast. Yep.
Yeah. Do you notify neighbouring properties?
Yes. Sorry, our site staff will call around anyone who's requested to be notified either the morning of or the day before, just to make them aware that the blast is going to take place.
Thanks very much. So I'm going to bring in Councillor Watts, then Councillor Lennox, and then Councillor Maitland, and then Councillor Kyle. So Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, environmental concerns aside, what was the biggest issue with sending the transport lorries eastwards up towards the A70? In some respects, looking on the face of it, that it does look in some respects almost a better route, which would avoid Saun and Catrin for the lorries. So what was the biggest problem with using that eastwards route rather than obviously going as we are at the moment and currently doing so, going through these two small villages? Thank you, Chair.
So yeah, we did look at the alternative routing of sending vehicles eastwards, basically down to the A70 at Muirkirk. Now you appreciate a lot of our materials tend to go to relatively built up areas, so Kilmarnock, Ayr, for example. Looking at Kilmarnock as the initial example, the difference in travel between the two routes, 33 miles on the preferred route, that's round trip, so there and back, versus 60 miles. So it's almost twice as far to travel. What that means is greater distance, greater emissions, greater travel time. Looking at Ayr as a different example, preferred route is 31 miles, and the route going east is 57.6. So again, it's not quite, but it's almost double the travel distance. What that has, so that'll obviously affect wear and tear on the road. It'll increase CO2 emissions from vehicle numbers. It'll increase our costs, which I appreciate isn't probably a particular material consideration, but what that then means is we can't serve the same market area as the current routes. So it would decrease our offering, meaning that the vehicles would need to travel in from elsewhere to serve those areas of the market that we can no longer get to. The other point to note is that if we were to travel eastwards down to the A70, we're then travelling through Lugar and we're travelling through Cumnock. Now there's actually more properties along those routes than there is within Catrin and Saun. So in my opinion, you're effectively you're shifting the problem from one community to another.
Apologies. So I'm going to Councillor Lennox.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Mr Wilkins. Would it be safe to say that the majority of the, well, question one, do you ever get any complaints about the actual operation itself?
No, we very rarely get complaints. We have had discussions during the community liaison meetings with local residents, and they've said that they're aware of the blast taking place, for example, but we don't get complaints written into us, for example.
I kind of suspected that the majority of the complaints that you all get are about haulage transport. Councillor Watts actually probably preempted the same question I was going to ask in terms of the analysis that he did in terms of the alternative route. I would be an advocate for maybe more examination of an alternative route. My question to you would be, were the results of that analysis that you did ever published to the local community? Were the reasons why and why you came to the decision it wasn't viable?
There was a letter sent to the planning authority. I'm not sure if it's been published on the website, but I'm sure it could be. Yeah, I'd be happy to go through it in a bit more detail if you'd like, or pick it up at a liaison meeting if that's preferred route.
No, really just to see if that had been shared with the community prior to some of the objectors coming today. So it's okay. Thank you.
That's Councillor Lennox. I'm going to bring in Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hoping I've got a question at the end of this, but it's the 50 years into the future. A business plan projecting 50 years into the future is quite brave, considering different practices that might come in. So you might actually find at some point it's not viable, or that new practices actually mean you're going to finish, excavation earlier. So I'm imagining you'll be revisiting this plan over the years. And I'd like to know at what stage do you revisit the plan? Is it every year, every 5 years? And if you do find that it's going to finish within less than the 50 years, is the bond we have strong enough to cover restoration? So it's just for some reassurance. I find 50 years, I mean, obviously the projections have come from, the capacity and what's in, etc. But I do find that quite a long period of time to ask for. So I'd like some reassurance. Thank you.
Yeah, so planning authorities have basically the opportunity to review the conditions and the approach to each application every 15 years, which is called a review of mineral permission review, effectively, so that the council will serve notice and the consent and all the conditions and everything else will be modernised and reviewed on that basis. In terms of the bond, the bond will be assessed as a worst case at each point in time. So the planning authority will, in a lot of cases, require, I do a lot of these on behalf of the planning authorities and also on behalf of operators. The planning authority will ask for perhaps a development scheme for 5 years and say, right, what's the worst case in that 5-year period? You then base the bond amount on that. It's checked by the council's specialist minerals advisor, and then that becomes the number for that 5 years. So for any reason the quarry ceased earlier, there should be certainly enough money to cover any financial requirement to restore the quarry.
East Ayrshire actually got a very robust system in place where they use mineral planning agents to review the bond annually. We get fully audited during the summer months, usually kind of April, May into June. We get a full audit from the mineral agents on behalf of the council, and part of that audit is reviewing the value of the bond. So it's bang up to date, really, as close as it can be.
Right, happy, Councillor Maitland. So I'm going to bring in Councillor Kyle.
Just a few questions, Chair. Job security, if you get granted the extension, is it the same amount of staff you'll have on the job? Or are you going to increase it?
No, I mean, the extension is really to allow us to maintain operations. So in terms of job security, if it's not granted, there'll be job losses potentially, or certainly people having to move around into different roles. If it's obviously granted, it would just allow us to maintain that continuous supply of materials that we do. So effectively, the processes on site won't change significantly, and there wouldn't be any change to the employment.
One of the other questions is, are you increasing the amount of lorries, or are you keeping the lorries the same?
No, I mean, as I say, it would be just a matter of replenishing reserves to allow operations to continue as they currently do. So there would be no increase in lorries as a result of the proposal.
The last question is, your lorries, they're carrying whinstone or the equivalent of whinstone. I take it they're carrying the same amount tonnage-wise, and do they go through a weighbridge so that you can determine how much weight's in each lorry?
Yes, exactly. We use a weighbridge. The lorries are weighed in and out. Those records are supplied as part of this planning audit I mentioned earlier. So the tonnages are recorded in quite a bit of detail and supplied to the council, and that's how we, for example, work out our roads contribution that we make. It's based on the tonnage that comes out the site. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
That's Councillor Kyle. Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation this morning. 2 points I'd like to raise, which you've probably covered in some of your answers already, but we heard it stated there was some concerns about the HGV convoying, and I believe in your presentation you mentioned you had a traffic light system as a control measure. So if you could maybe expand a wee bit more on that for me, that's the first point. And then sort of linked to that, the community engagement, I was interested in how you have opportunities for direct communication channels with the residents. I believe you've mentioned some of your previous answers, community liaison meetings. So how regular do they happen, and what opportunities do residents have to raise things direct with the management team? Thank you.
Yeah, so the traffic light system is set up on the weighbridge. So it's just that as lorries are exiting, and what it does is it'll stay green at all times until a lorry passes through it. When the lorry passes through it, it'll turn red, and it will stay red for 3 minutes, and then it'll go back to green. And the idea of that is you don't have 3 or 4 lorries leaving the site in quick succession. So the idea is we've got at least 3 minutes between one lorry and the next lorry departing the site. We've just recently actually put signs up along the access saying no stopping. Once you're over the weighbridge, you have to leave the site. And this is to ensure that we can stagger the lorries coming out of the site. So that seems to be working quite well. In terms of the liaison, I tend to join the Tyncornhill Quarry Fund meetings, which tend to take place once a quarter. We also have community liaison meetings on a fairly frequent basis. I think the last one was about 6 weeks ago, perhaps. I think the next one's due in the spring, so maybe two or three a year. And at those meetings, we tend to keep it restricted to representatives from the community councils, just to I think it aids a sort of roundtable discussion. We have opened it up to the public before. It just becomes quite difficult to actually have a kind of constructive conversation. So yeah, that's how we tend to do it.
Just a quick follow-up question. 3 minutes sounds quite short to me, but is that the industry standard? Can you give me any further information on the sort of gaps there. Obviously you said that you advise them not to stop, but 3 minutes just doesn't sound long enough in my head.
I mean, there's not really an industry standard as such. This is a kind of, this is a system that we've put in specifically for Tincornhill because there has been, concerns raised about the transport. 3 minutes is there to ensure there's a minimum gap. Generally, I think it will be, greater. I mean,
you'd probably be travelling. The first vehicle kind of in excess of a mile beyond the quarry or beyond the weighbridge at that point, effectively before the next vehicle left. So it should stop. We're just assuming they're travelling at 20 to 30 mile an hour even. That would result in a reasonable gap.
Yeah, I mean there are busy times at the quarry. First thing, they're looking to get material out onto construction sites. So there are busy times at the quarry. So it's trying to find that sort of common ground where we're managing the traffic whilst we haven't got a massive queue of lorries waiting to depart the site. Yeah.
Councillor Maven.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm it and clarify for the public, probably watch this later, there's no plan to increase your activity. There's no plan to increase the number of shot blasts you're doing every year. There's no plan to increase the number of lorries coming in and out. It's maintaining the same level of activity. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yes, that's exactly it. There's no proposals to increase the output of the quarry or the frequency of blasting or the number of lorries. It's purely a matter of replenishing reserves to allow operations to continue.
Right, thank you. As one of the objections was talking about mud and debris in the roads and non-sheeting of vehicles. You mentioned earlier your vehicles are sheeted over the top to prevent dust. And mud and debris in the roads, are you taking steps to clean lorry wheels so they're coming out of the quarry clean and not spreading debris?
Yes, we've got a wheel wash on site just before they go over the weighbridge. They go through a wheel wash. We've then got quite a long access road which allows any wet material to kind of fall off, and we hire in a brush, a wheel cleaning brush every now and again where it's needed.
Right, thank you. And one of the objections is lack of community benefit, lack of transparency. I'm pleased to hear you're talking about increasing the community benefit. Perhaps a lack of transparency, maybe something to work on for the future, social media or the community groups who are attending your meetings about these funds maybe need to communicate out better about what the funds are actually being spent on so that this lack of transparency thing will disappear.
Yeah, I mean, the way the fund is set up is it's very much run by the board. Breedon, for example, don't get to vote on how those funds are spent. It's very much for the local community to decide. I think part of that lack of transparency, the Catrin and the Soren Community Council representatives have been invited to participate, and I think that's the kind of main reason really is to try and break down those barriers and create a bit of dialogue between community representatives and the fund.
Thank you very much. I don't see any further questions from members in the room or online. So thank you very much, Mr. Wilkins, Mr. Lewis. So members, at this point, I'm going to close the hearing, but before we move on, I'm going to bring in Craig.
Through you, Chair, I wonder if we could maybe have a wee brief adjournment for maybe up to 5 minutes. I'm conscious there's something that was raised that maybe want to clarify. So I wonder, I beg the committee's indulgence just for maybe 5 minutes to clarify something that was that's been raised, if that's okay, before we move to the next stage, which would clearly be deliberation and then decision making.
So you're quite happy to take just a quick 5 minutes? Yep. Jamie, could we start the recording? Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much. Councillor Lennox.
Chair, I'm going to step out the meeting because I think my position on the committee has been compromised to an extent, and I wouldn't like there to be any ambiguity as to how I'm going to determine the application. So I'll step out for the time being.
Thanks, Councillor Lennox. So, as we previously closed the hearing, I'm now going to hand over to planning colleagues to basically respond to any questions that's come up during the hearing. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. So just in relation to some of the objections that were made, firstly, in relation to traffic and the HGV movements, it's important to understand that issues related to driver behaviour aren't material considerations. What we're considering is the continued use of the roads, road safety and these sort of aspects. Just looking through some of the points here. So there was talk about damage to the listed bridge, but that again isn't a material planning consideration. Convoying we've talked about, and that seems to be getting controlled. There were some issues, I understand, with convoying happening, and that is being controlled. And will continue to be through the Section 75 agreement as well. Just in relation to climate change, paragraph 103, page 30 of the report, considers climate change, and it's noted that the EIA report indicates the proposed development's lifetime greenhouse gas emissions would be slightly lower than the sectoral baseline. So that's what's talked about from the objector, and it's considered in the report that this could reasonably be considered as minimising emissions. I think it's important to realise that there will presumably always be a need for aggregates, even in 50 years' time. 5 years, limiting the permission to 5 years is a very short period of time, would really not give a lot of time for the quarry to establish itself, and we always look to have a sort of longer term supply of aggregates available. And also, as Donald had raised, there is the opportunity for, well, there's a requirement for minerals permissions to be reviewed at 15-year periods, as they're called ROMP reviews. It's a review of old minerals permissions. So they wouldn't be looking at the principle of it, but the conditions that are on the planning permission. And there was quite a bit of talk about the minerals, the contribution to Tincorn Hill Quarry Fund. Although that is secured in the Section 75, it is important to realise that that is not a material consideration, so that can't be taken account of in any decision made. The diversion of HGVs to the east, well, the proposal was never really to do that anyway. That was considered because there had been some objections about, some objections suggested that the vehicle should be routed to the east. I think it's been quite well explained that there are problems with that as well. So there are obviously pros and cons. But overall, we do think that routing to the west is the overall best route. Talked about the ROMP reviews. I think that's it, unless Graham's a case officer, he might have anything else he wants to add to that.
Thanks, Vi. No, nothing really from myself over and above everything that's already been said. I think, again, as the agent and applicant has sort of mentioned before, it's just important to note there is no intensification of the works on the quarry. Essentially, what this extension is looking to do is to continue the existing operations for a 50-year period. So there won't be, or there shouldn't be any increase in traffic movements or vehicle movements. It's essentially a continuation of what's taking place at the moment. In terms of jobs, etc., it's about securing the workforce that's there for the foreseeable future. Obviously, without an extension, the workforce will inevitably end within the next few years. Blasting, etc., the actual workings of the quarry will continue as they are at present and have been doing for many years just now. So it's just to sort of make that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Graham. So, members, at this point, I'll hand over to yourselves for discussion, questions, and then ultimately to come to a decision. So, I've got Councillor Crawford want to come in.
Thanks, Chair. Just to ask, is there any reportable accidents recently with the lorries?
Through you, Chair, no. I've checked the accident statistics, and over I think the previous 10 to 15 years, we're not actually seen any injury-related accidents. That's not to say that there hasn't been any minor accidents, but those type of accidents don't get reported to us.
Councillor McGee.
Hi, Chair. I just want to go back to the traffic management. I think it was in page 43, page 44, traffic management plan, and the objector raised the issue, and then the applicant answered the question that I asked. I was just looking for some clarity. It must be an age thing. I forgot the word they used, but I think there's lorries that have come up, collects. I think was the word that was used. So they don't seem to be covered under the traffic management plan, and I can see that if a lorry's making its way there, that's coming for collects, then it wouldn't necessarily be in the traffic management plan. However, when it's leaving the site, then to me it should be under the traffic management plan and it should be following a particular route. I just want to clarify, is that the case? And if it's not the case, why is it not the case? And can we make it the case? Thank you.
Yes, so again, my understanding is that the traffic management plan covers both directions of traffic, so it's the traffic going to and from the site should follow the agreed routing.
My understanding in the answer, and maybe I should have followed it up, my apologies for that, was that they weren't covered under the traffic management plan, but maybe I've misunderstood that answer. Thank you.
As far as I understand, I think the operator has less control over the vehicles and that come to collect materials. But the wording of the condition 18 should apply to all HGV traffic that's associated with the quarry. So condition 18 requires a submission of a traffic management plan that details all the management measures associated with vehicle movements, including the routing, hours of vehicle movements and a daily cap on HGV movements, and measures to ensure convoying is avoided, and a regular review of the TMP. So it would really be up to the operator to make sure that that all traffic is included in that.
The reason I'm labouring this point, I suppose, is that during the questioning, it's clear that the actual operation of the quarry doesn't receive many, if any, complaints, and most of the objections are around traffic management. So I'm just trying to be clear that every vehicle leaving that site is under that traffic management plan, because it is the responsibility of the quarry operator to manage that traffic management plan. Again, they might, once that vehicle goes out, they haven't much control, but if they do get complaints, then it must surely be up to them to take appropriate action that whatever operator it was doesn't get back on site or whatever. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, I'm obviously conscious that I think as part of the applicant's presentation, they did say that where
they get details of, for example, number plates of whatever vehicle. They will investigate that, and they have said, you know, depending on what the complaint is, it could lead ultimately to saying to that driver or that company, you know, don't come back, and being kind of blunt about it. So I suppose in answer to your question, quite clearly, the proposed condition 18 is one that the applicants will require to discharge in terms of the traffic management plan. And I think as officers, we can take on board what you and other councillors are saying there about what you would expect to see in that, which would also basically be a traffic management plan that covers every lorry, tipper, HGV that goes in and out of that site that you want to make sure is covered. Although I do see at the back of the committee room the applicant nodding anyway. So I'm assuming therefore that certainly as officers we will take that on board, and we will be looking for, and I think the applicant is being left in no doubt, that we would expect to see in that traffic management plan details of all the, you know, the HGVs, tippers, etc., irrespective of whether they're collection or no. We would expect that you would expect to see that covered as part of the discharge of that condition.
Thanks, Craig. And you're quite happy with that response, Councillor McGee. So, members, any further questions? Councillor Maben.
Thank you, Chair. One of the questions is concerns over adequacy of restoration proposals and financial guarantee to secure these. I mean, it's 50 years away, the restoration. If this is granted today, we'll all be dead by then. I take it this would be very similar to the open cast sites, that there would be a bond held of some kind to make sure that any restoration in the future would be completed to the correct standard.
Yes, that's right, Councillor. Yeah, the condition up here at the moment. But yeah, there will be a financial guarantee secured, and that's reviewed annually. So unlike wind farms, for example, which is a 5-year review, the quarry will actually be reviewed every single year. So you know, that just ensures that we always have up-to-date adequate amount, and obviously the actual quarry progress plans, if you like, how sort of managing how the quarry progresses, that's done on an annual or otherwise different timeline as agreed by us basis. So again, you're sort of monitoring how the quarry's actually being progressed, and then also before each phase of the quarry, we get a detailed restoration plan. So of course, if things change, you know, sort of 10 years down the line, where what at this stage seems to be an appropriate aftercare solution, if in 10 years' time something changes and it's no longer adequate, through those sort of staged reviews, we'd be able to get that looked at and make sure that we are actually securing a more robust, up-to-date restoration proposal. But certainly the actual restoration plans plus the financial guarantee to cover those are updated regularly, so we should have adequate control over that.
Through you, Chair, as well, I think that the report also makes clear we're taking a belt and braces approach in terms of the guarantees. So we're looking at the planning conditions, as Graham has alluded to, but we're also looking to make sure it's in the Section 75 agreement as well, so that it runs with the land, to make sure absolutely that we're covered.
Thanks, Craig. Is there any further questions at this point? No. So members, yep, Councillor McGee.
If there are no further questions, I'm happy to move to determination. I would, sorry, in case Councillor Maitland, I propose that given the changes to the paragraph where there was an error, I'm satisfied with the conditions and the answers, and I would propose, Ken, that we accept what's before us here today and approve the extension. Thank you.
I'll second that.
No,
sorry.
Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. I was going to move to determination. Happy to second, Councillor McGee. Thank you.
Yep. So we've got a proposer in the sector. Is there anybody else otherwise minded? No. Okay then. That's the decision.
For the purposes of the minute, the application has been approved, subject to the conditions in the report. and the amended paragraph.
Thank you very much, Aileen. So, members, we're going to move on to item 4 on the agenda, and that is planning application number 25/0367/PP. And it's revisions to plot 10 and alterations to existing play area, open space, including access, parking, levels, landscaping, and all other associated works. Part of in retrospect at land east of Draffin House, Draffin Mount, Stewarton, and it's East Ayrshire by Avent Homes, and that's Scotland Limited, and it's pages 52 to 66 of your papers. So members, we have a hearing for this item as well. So again, posing 5 minutes for each objector and 15 minutes for the agent. All happy again? Yeah. So I'm going to open the hearing procedure and hand over to Craig Thomas. Oh,
it's myself
apologies,
first.
Fiona.
He will come in at some point.
Hand over to Fiona for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is a local development being presented to Planning Committee under the Council Scheme of Delegation, as it is subject to more than 10 objections. The application site is located within the Draffin East housing site under the provisions of the East Ayrshire Local Development Plan 2, where it is a development opportunity site. The site is located within the Stewarton settlement boundary, and construction works remain underway within the northern part of the overall residential estate. The application site is at the southern part of the Draffin East housing site and essentially comprises 2 main parcels. The first parcel of land comprises plot 10, car parking area and an internal access road and amenity open space, whilst the second parcel comprises an area of recreational open space, which includes the existing children's play area. The proposed development is partly in retrospect as per your papers, and it is for the following components. The alteration of the layout of residential plot 10 to remove the previously consented detached garage and driveway area, which is retrospective in nature. The relocation of the parking for plot 10 towards the front of the dwelling house, extending the private access road that serves plots 10, 11 and 12 by 2.1 metres, which is also retrospective. The provision of additional landscaping comprising hedging, shrubs and 5 numbered native trees to the front of plot 10 and at the entrance area to the Draffin East housing site, which is not retrospective. And the provision of an outdoor fitness area to be sited alongside the existing play area within the site, which again is not retrospective. Just before I pass to Craig, I'll just clarify that members had the opportunity to attend a site visit last week with Craig and were able to view the site and its surroundings. I'm just going to pass you over to Craig, who's going to run through the committee plans and photographs, and then back to myself in a sec.
Thanks, Fiona. I'll just run through some location plans, site plans and site photos for information. The first plan is a general location plan of Stewarton. You can see the application site to the southeastern corner towards Loudon Street and the B778. The next is a more general location plan of the Draffin housing estate. You can see that red line application site towards the southern part of the estate, towards Loudon Street and the B778. The plot 10 is essentially to the left of the application site, with the play area to the right. The next slide here is a more detailed site plan showing plot 10 to the left, and the play area with the attached proposed gym equipment to the right of the red line site. The next slide shows I'll just go back to this slide. This was a detailed plot layout of plot 10 as it was originally approved. You can see in the rear garden the detached garage with access off the private access road. As part of this application, that garage and access has been deleted, and parking will be provided towards the front of the plot. That's back to you can see on this plan the new parking area to the front and the slight extension of the private access road shaded there in red. The next slide is to compensate for, there'll be some loss of amenity space to compensate for the new area of parking and the extension to the access road. So there's going to be additional planting, hedgerows and 5 additional trees in that area. And further to compensate for this proposal, the applicants proposed 3 additional pieces of outdoor gym equipment to be located next to the existing children's play area. And this plan shows that. You can see the 3 pieces of equipment there with the children's play area to the left of the plan. This image just shows the proposed play equipment, 3 pieces, general outdoor, gym equipment. The next few photos are indicative photo montages submitted by the applicant, primarily showing the landscaping improvements in front of plot 10. There's various viewpoints to show that. I'll just show you these. That's the enhanced landscaping from different areas. And that final one that shows the parking area in plot 10. These are the actual site photos. This is the private access road with the side boundary of plot 10. You can see there's level changes from the private access road down to the boundary of plot 10. And then there's further drops to the rear garden. And due to these levels, it would have proved very difficult to get the driveway to the detached garage at an accessible level. So it would have required quite a lot of engineering, retaining walls, etc. So the solution was to relocate the parking to the front of plot 10. That's the rear garden looking towards the rear, where the garage would have been set down in that rear garden. That's the parking area retrospective. It's in place. That's a view from Loudon Street looking towards plot 10. The barricade areas where the parking is. The area to the front, obviously the landscaping's not in at this stage, but there will be all the hedging and additional trees in that area. This photo is taken looking towards the existing children's play area. It's in the centre of the photo. The gym equipment will be located in front of that. It shows the existing housing built in the proximity of the play area. And this is another viewpoint showing the play area. The gym equipment will be located on the grassed area to the left of the play area. And that concludes my photos. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Turning back to the report, we have no objections from any consultees that we have consulted. In terms of representations, we have a total of 33 parties that have submitted objections in relation to the proposed development, and 3 parties have submitted representations in support of the proposal. All points of objection and support have been summarised in your report and noted as material or non-material considerations for clarity. The development plan for East Ayrshire now comprises the adopted Local Development Plan of 2024 and National Planning Framework 4 with associated supplementary guidance, and the report before you refers to the main primary planning considerations at paragraph 23. The proposals represent development within an existing approved housing site, which are appropriate in regard to layout, design and scale to the residential area within which they are located. Proposals accord with the principles of placemaking and creative development, which incorporates the 6 qualities of successful place, integrating successfully with locale and being sympathetic to the character and amenity of the residential area, raising no unacceptable amenity impacts in terms of noise or disturbance. Proposal for the gym equipment will enhance the quality and function of the existing recreational open space, introducing inclusive, low-impact recreational infrastructure, promoting health and well-being. The proposed works are modest in size and scale, will retain the character of the area and integrate with the established residential environment. They will bring additional opportunity for recreation within a larger area of strategic open space and are positioned close to the existing play area, which seeks to ensure that the proposal will not adversely affect amenity of nearest properties. Overall, this is considered to be a useful enhancement of the recreational provision on site. The works to plot 10 are proportionate, represent the existing character of nearby and surrounding houses and do not result in unacceptable impacts on residential amenity or visual appearance. The extent and quality of the landscaping proposed is critical and will compensate for the loss of a relatively limited area of amenity open space, which will have a positive overall impact, creating an improved and attractive frontage to the residential area facing onto Loudon Street, enhancing the visual appearance of that part of Draffin East Estate and the surrounding area at a gateway to Stewarton. Therefore recommended that the application be approved as per the report before you, members. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. Members, move on to the next part of the hearing process, where we hear for the objectors or their agents and present the objections to the committee in support of their written objections. Could I invite Mr. McHardy up to the lectern, please? And Mr. McHardy, okay, it's 5 minutes, and I'll just give you a gentle reminder of a minute to go. Thanks.
Yeah, no bother. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Graham McHardy, and I live in the Draffin estate, sort of directly affected by this application. So the key issue here is recreational green space, and this application compounds an major existing shortfall. The planning system does not treat all open space as equal. It distinguishes clearly between amenity green space and recreational green space. For a development of this size, East Ayrshire open plan standards require approximately 5,700 square metres of recreational green space. Avant provides 3,807 square metres. That's a shortfall of 1,900 square metres, about 8 tennis courts. This figure is taken directly from the applicant's own documents. It is not referenced anywhere in the officer's report. The wider grassed areas are described as recreational, but in the report, but in reality, they are poorly drained, frequently waterlogged, full of weeds and bare soil, not bounded by hedging or similar, and unusable for long periods of the year. Under INF 2, ENV 3, Play 1 and Plan 65, recreational spaces must be usable, safe, drained and functional year-round. These areas, including the play park itself, simply do not meet those standards. So that's a photo taken last month of the play park. The proposed gym equipment is located on ground that is already waterlogged. The location for the 3 gym stations is part of an area already identified by Avant as recreational space, and that land currently holds standing water, becomes muddy and unsafe in winter, has no drainage design or soil preparation proposed. The existing play park immediately adjacent also suffers from this stand water as a result of topsoil strip to the glacial till and no surface or drainage treatments. The ground levels shown in the developer's own site levels drawn do not reflect what is actually built, and those inaccuracies matter when assessing ground surface water and usability. Yet the officer's report concludes that the proposals has no drainage impact without a drainage report, a ground condition assessment, or any reference to ENV 19, which requires the development to safeguard open spaces and surface water function. Installing metal exercise equipment on unstable ground is not an upgrade, it locks in existing failures. The factor has also confirmed that the drainage repairs are now, the drainage issues of the play park are now the residents' financial responsibility. And this is a critical point about developer behaviour. The factor has confirmed in writing to residents that we have been advised by Avant Homes that since the area has been handed over, they are unable to assist with the problems at the play park, and further that the developers are, if developers are unwilling or unable to complete further works, we have no power to enforce this and costs will lie with the residents. This means that the drainage failure within the play park and the surrounding recreational area is already being treated as residents' responsibility. Unless planning intervention is applied now, these defects will remain permanent and cost the community. This directly conflicts with DP1 and OP1, which require developers to deliver completed, usable, high-quality places for before leaving. The cairn placement also shows procedural inaccuracies and raises safety concerns. The approved memorial cairn has been shown in multiple occasions across several unrelated applications, often without being mentioned in the description. It's appeared at Kiln Drive, beside Quarry Walk, adjacent to the play park, then inside the play park fence, and now this application fixes it within the play park area. This movement has happened without clear consultation or explanation. Placing the stone monument inside a children's play park is not appropriate. It poses safety risks, climbing hazards and antisocial behaviour concerns. The heritage feature should not be placed where children climb on it or where it becomes a magnet for vandalisms. So just before I conclude, members, I'm asking you to consider the following questions. Why does the officer's report not reference the recreational space shortfall of 1,900 square metres, despite it being stated in the applicant's own design statement. How can INF 2, ENV 3 and Play 1 not be considered not applicable when the application affects designated recreational open space? What drainage assessment supports the statement no drainage impact, despite existing standing water both in the play park and the proposed gym area? Should the council accept new recreational infrastructure being placed on land that already is waterlogged and not fit for purpose? And on what basis has the cairn been repeatedly moved across unrelated applications, and why is it now positioned inside a fenced play park? So what I'm asking the committee is either to refuse or continue the application until Avant provides a drainage and ground condition plan that the play park and gym area, a functional year-round recreational space upgrade, not merely equipment placed on inadequate ground, clear and transparent fixed location for the cairn outside the play park consistent with earlier approvals, and a credible plan for completing all recreational space and landscaping to the standards required before the developer leaves. So, yeah, I just want to say this is not about opposing change. It's just about ensuring that the Draffin Park receives safe, usable, high-quality, open space and that the planning policy requires and the public deserve. Thanks for it.
Thanks very much, Mr. Hardy. So at this point, we'll just open up for questions.
Yep.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yep.
Were you ever consulted by the applicant?
No.
And what equipment?
No.
Or what compensatory equipment could be put in that?
The first that we heard about it is when neighbours were notified of the planning application, and that was the only correspondence that we've had with the developer. And that is including the factor as well, which I confirmed with them.
Thank you. So members over, so I've got Councillor Maitland.
Thanks, Chair. Similar question to your own. Before the play park was handed over to the residents for the responsibility, what consultation was there, if any, over the handing over, and had complaints been put in by yourselves? Thank you.
So what happened is obviously the estate's not complete. The factor notified the residents to say there's now an ongoing charge for the play park. So, like, when concerns were brought up about the condition of the play park, so I actually put in an official complaint to the factor to say, you know, what is the defects period, handover period, and they sort of concluded in their sort of formal response to me that they don't have any liability towards that. It remains with Avant. They have tried to engage with Avant about the issues, and Avant have confirmed to them that it's now residents' responsibility, and it would be down to the cost. So they're looking to provide us with quotes to input drainage. So yeah, so at the moment it's sort of over to residents. So Avant can put anything they like. If there's any defects, then it's down to residents.
I don't think there's any further questions in the room or online. Thanks very much, Mr. McHardy. I'm going to invite Mr. Hay to the lectern.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee, for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Graham Hay. I'm also a resident at Quarry Walk. We have, as you saw in the objections, a number of concerns regarding the proposed amendment to the planning for our site. The first aspect was relating to landscaping. Avant proposed to mitigate the inclusion of the additional hard standing to plot 10 by providing screening, planting and landscaping to modify the effects of the raised parking area that have already been formed and is a retrospective part of this application. Having lived in the site for 3.5 years, we had hoped that landscaping provided by Avant would have flourished and provide worthy visual, amenity and thriving habitat for wildlife. The reality has been somewhat disappointing, to say the least, particularly around the Suds Pond, which is highly visible from Loudon Street, where you enter Stewarton. Unfortunately, the array of bare sticks, stunted plants around the Suds Pond and beyond that you probably viewed during your recent site visit sadly does not really change significantly over the summer months either. Inadequate soil preparation, planting too close to the footway, poor choice and lack of variety of plant species have left what can only be described as a sad collection of inappropriate, unmanageable, overgrown planting, which has failed to thrive or has died already. It is worthy of note that the slope angles formed from the footway down to the perimeter of the Suds Pond along Quarry Walk are so steep that pavement surface has cracked in a couple of locations, indicating that ground movement has already occurred. The intervening area had been planted, but unsurprisingly, the planting has struggled to survive. There are no signs that Avant intend to address these issues, and I would hope that there are mechanisms within the planning process that will ensure that both the existing and proposed planting is to at least a satisfactory standard. The reason for highlighting these issues is to make the committee aware of the poor quality of landscaping that has been carried out on the site to date. And it certainly does not match in any way the computer-generated representations provided by Avant Homes to prospective purchasers, and which are similar to those that you've seen this morning, which they've included within the planning applications. The cairn was the next topic. The cairn is a public art installation and should create identity and belonging, spark conversation and debate, enhance public spaces, encourage exploration, and even act as a landmark. Accordingly, the design and location of such an installation should be carefully considered and the community engaged with as part of this process. The cairn, for clarity, is intended to support a date stone which was excavated from historic lime kilns on the site where the development now is located. As Graham has already indicated, the current position of the cairn has moved on numerous occasions on the site. Avant appear to be unclear as where they intend to construct the cairn, indicating to me that little thought has been applied in the location of such a significant opportunity to distinguish the development. In fact, the current orientation of the cairn is indicated as facing into the play park away from the footway on Quarry Walk per drawing DWA 535807. Accordingly, the view from the footway and Quarry Walk will be to the rear elevation of the cairn, which will be a blank stone wall, which will be unlikely to inspire or fulfil the purpose of the installation. The current proposals to incorporate the cairn within play park boundary, as Graham has mentioned, seem to introduce issues with children misusing the facility and the risk of vandalism. In my opinion, the art installation should be located in a prominent freestanding position, close to the entrance of the site, or indeed on the verge of Loudon Street, where people are entering Stewarton, to create a worthy installation that will fulfil or maybe even surpass expectation. Currently, there does not appear to be any significant detail within the application on the construction of the cairn itself. I would hope that the construction materials from the lime kilns era and potential for using natural stone and lime mortar would be considered appropriate for that type of installation. And I would hope these details could be included within the planning application, which appears to be absent at the moment. Further, there are no apparent provisions for maintenance access to the cairn area itself, as it's bounded by a fence. So I would ask the committee that a careful review of the best location of the cairn is considered to ensure that sufficient detail is included in the planning application, and also to ensure that what was envisaged will be fulfilled by the developer. Finally, the outdoor gym, as Graham has already pointed out, ground conditions appear to fall short of quality standards identified in current guidance for play parks. The conditions that we're experiencing with the existing play park will be replicated in the extended area forming the outdoor gym, which is likely to suffer the same fate unless measures are incorporated to manage groundwater, i.e. to install suitable drainage. There are some other aspects of ground conditions that have a bearing on existing conditions that have a bearing on the proposed play park. Access to the play park from the footway has not been altered to remove a concrete cope, which will be showed on one of the photographs, which is between the footway and the path accessing the play park.
Can I just gently sum it up if you can, please?
Okay, will do. So access is restricted to the play park for any using a wheelchair or a pram. The only detail in the plans that show access path to the facilities which are meant to be accessible shows a path accessing the area, but it stops short of getting access to each of the piece of equipment. And the footpath is surfaced with whin, which is already scoured, and the base stone is showing as well. It would therefore be appropriate for the application to be amended to include additional information and to detail measures to mitigate the above issues. In conclusion, I would respectfully suggest that a well-detailed and coherent modifications to the application should be considered appropriate to address the concerns of residents and to provide improved proposals to benefit the development and the adjacent environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Nelson. So I'm going to open up to questions from members. Councillor McGee.
You brought up the issue of landscaping. So we went on the site visit. It was a beautiful but cold November day, so it's not really the best time of the year to look at landscaping because there's no growth at all. So what I'm taking for what you've just said to the committee is it doesn't improve during the summer. Would that be a fair reflection in what you said?
Yes, Councillor, that is the case. For the reasons I'm not a horticulturist, but all I do is I can see outside the window that there seems to be a lack of growth in most of the plants. Some of the trees have already died. A lot of the bushes are just sticks, and a lot of the plantings very close to the pavement, and it's actually overhanging the pavement. So hawthorn bushes are planted next to the pavement, which doesn't make any sense to me. These plants can grow to maybe 3 metres wide or even larger. So there doesn't appear to be a well thought out process in considering what's been planted or how it's been actually put in the ground and given an opportunity to thrive. So it certainly does not fulfil the graphical representations made by Avant for what we bought and what's been presented as part of this planning application.
But with regard to the responsibility for the play park as well, I mean, my understanding that the development isn't finished, so how can it be the residents' issue?
As far as I know, there's been some sort of phased handover of parts of the common parts of the site. But what I think Graham was trying to explain, that there seems to be a gulf between what Avant hand over, and there's no check or balance that determines whether the quality of that is fit for purpose. And as a result, the residents are then left with something that falls short of that.
Quite happy with that, Councillor McGee. Yep. Going to bring in Councillor Cowan, then Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr Hay and Mr McHardy for your presentation this morning. And I think, Mr Hay, you might just have answered my question there in your final comment. I'm interested in how fit for use these recreational areas are. So if you can give me an idea, are they fit for use and sort of level of usage, if possible?
I think the play park parks themselves are fantastic. They look great and they seem to be well used, which is fantastic. I don't use them myself. I don't have any children either, but certainly it's great to see kids enjoying it. However, things like the ground conditions do have a bearing on usability, and I think Graham's got some experience having a son that uses the play park and comes back with mud head to toe on some occasions. So I think there has been provision for matting around about the actual appliances themselves, but the play park is used in a much more general sense for kids to run about, and there is mud there. A silly thing that's a small thing, but the bin that's been provided within the play park has got no cover on it. So when that gets filled, then the wind howls through and you end up with rubbish everywhere. So there seems to be a lack of thought on certain details, which mean that a well thought out play area which was designed hasn't actually come to fruition.
Thanks. And Mr Hale, I owe you an apology. I've been calling you Mr Nelson, but misreading the notes there. So
no problem at all. Don't take it personally.
So I'm going to bring in Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. My questions actually just reflect what Councillor Cowan said, but I was quite disappointed in looking back at the site visit. There is it is not an equal access playground, and am I correct? I'm quite happy to be wrong here. There is no footpath between the path to the play park.
Sorry, maybe I wasn't totally clear. There is an existing path between the footway, the pavement, and the play park, but the coping at the edge of that, which was previously between the footway and the grass, has a small rounded top on it, which projects above the line of the pavement, and that's been left in place. So it should have been replaced with a flat top curb, which allows somebody to simply push. I've seen people with prams having to lift them over and to manage these. And I think the pathway, the surface is compacted sort of small stone, and that's been worn away and eroded over time. And there's now the base stonework, which formed the support to the path, is now exposed. And my understanding is that the next path going into the gym area will be the same construction, albeit that that path doesn't extend to each appliance itself. It stops short and then goes on to a matting, which the grass grows through. I'm not an expert, but I would imagine that anybody trying to access that in a wheelchair or whatever, or has an ambient disability, might have some problems, but to see if that could be improved somewhat.
Any further questions for Mr. Hay? Thank you very much, Mr. Hay and Mr. McHardy. So just ask you to return to the public gallery. So members, now moving on to the part of the hearing where we hear from the applicant who's going to speak in support of his application. Could I invite Mr. Michael Nelson up to the lectern, please?
Convener, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to address you today in support of this planning application. My name is Michael Nelson. I'm the Land and Planning Manager for Avant Homes in Scotland. I'll keep this brief, as overall we agree with the conclusions reached by the Council's Planning Service in recommending this application for approval. We welcome the collaborative approach the Planning Service has brought to the consideration of this planning application to date, and believe that that work has clearly been demonstrated within the committee report and in the recommendation for approval. We consider that the development proposed is fully supported by the development plan, and there are no material considerations which would justify refusal in these circumstances. I would, however, be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So it is now open to questions. So I'm aware that part of this planning application is retrospective. So my first question is, like, there's obviously been no contact with our planning department before you went ahead and done the work. So just try to understand the reasons behind that, and try to ask the question earlier on of one of the objectors, whether you consulted with the residents in some sort of compensatory scheme, and what was your thinking behind 3 bits of gym equipment? So that's just the start. Thanks.
Yeah, the retrospective nature of the application in relation to plot 10 ultimately was an error on Avant's part. It wasn't the intention to carry on with those works prior to obtaining approval from it. That was a sort of failure from our perspective. We had been in sort of conversation with planning officers around a number of options that could have resolved the technical constraints that we were seeing on plot 10, and unfortunately those works went ahead of the approval being obtained. So it's one we regret, and we do apologise that the committee's having to sort of determine a retrospective application. It's not how we generally want to do business. In terms of consultation, similarly, I think probably linked to the retrospective nature of the application, consultation with the residents could have been better. I think we haven't done any formal consultation with the residents on how that space could have been developed, and I think that was linked to trying to get the development which had went ahead sort of retrospectively permitted as soon as possible. So yeah.
Thanks for that. So I'll hold off any questions about it now. So I'm aware there's a few members want to come in. So I'm going to bring Councillor Maitland and Councillor Friel.
Thank you. You just said in your presentation there that there was no formal consultation with the residents, and you can hear yourself how disappointed they are in what has happened. We visited ourselves, and the landscaping, I appreciate this is not finished, but this phase does appear to be finished, and the landscaping is poor. It's very poor. And we've also heard about the play area which is actually unusable for large parts of the time. So you have handed over this now to the residents, but the residents are obviously quite disappointed. Is there anything you can offer here to address that? Thank you.
What I would say is I do accept a lot of the criticisms of the landscaping, particularly around the front of the site. I was on site yesterday. It isn't up to standard, and there is a lot of work for us to do between now and when we leave the site. And I'm sort of here today to commit that we are committed to doing those works as soon as possible. This is the planting season, as I understand. I'm also not a horticulturalist, but I understand this is the perfect time for us to be going in, taking out trees that have failed, shrubs that have failed, and sort of planting them up for the sort of growing season that's coming. That is our full intention. We would like to do it as part of the wider package of works. We acknowledge that we need to do the hedge along Loudon Street. There is a lot of works to landscaping and the general public open space at the rear of the site. We're not sort of shying away from that, and it is part of our sort of critical path over the next 6 months to get that up to a standard that both I'm happy with and hopefully that the residents are happy with as well.
Councillor Friel.
Thank you, Mr Nelson. Just before we begin, I'm a local member in that area, so I'm aware of the feelings of the people who live there. And one of the things, well, apart from the fact of disappointment that a company of your size wasn't able to know that you needed planning application to change it, I think that's disappointing. Secondly, people of Stewarton were really concerned about the cairn location. Well, I was on a site visit. We were both on a site visit many years ago when those lime kilns were in place, and we were promised that it would have a prominent position so that people would know the history of that site. And to stick it at the play park is absolutely unbelievable. Secondly, everyone in this area knows that Stewarton is in deficit as far as green space is concerned, and you're proposing to take away some of it to build fence off an area for gym equipment. Have you got an answer for those questions?
In relation to the cairn, that obviously isn't part of this planning application. I think my understanding is that the location where it's proposed as part of the play park has been quite a long-standing location. However, having said that, if there is a more appropriate location that the residents would like to see it within the site and that could get support from planning, we're happy to consider that. It's not something that we are sort of trying to force upon anyone. We think it is a quite important and quite interesting piece of public art, which does reflect the heritage of the site and Stewarton more widely. So if there are other locations that you want us to consider, we're happy to consider that. It's not necessarily set in stone in that sense. There is a planning approval for it in that location, which is what we've reflected on the plans that you can see as part of this. But if residents or the committee want us to look at it again, happy to do so. And then, sorry, missed your second question.
Talking about the green space deficit, sorry, you're taking away open green space to fence off for a gym equipment.
Yeah, I think in that sense, I understand the concerns that have been raised in that regard. I don't see it as a loss of green space personally. I think it is a different use of green space for a different type of recreation. From my own visit on site, the play area is of high quality. I have taken away notes in relation to ground conditions and drainage, which we'll do some more work on and try and see what the problem is there. But it does look like a quite high quality park to me, and it sounds like it is getting used well. I think the problem with it is that it's probably geared towards younger children, and there's probably not a lot for older children and young adults to do from a sort of play and exercise point of view. And so the proposal that we're bringing forward today does sort of attempt to address that. And we're sort of seeing, we're sort of exploring this as part of other developments in Scotland as a potential sort of young teen type exercise, part of that wider play offer on our sites. And so whilst I accept that it results in a loss of a grassed area, I don't think it sort of removes the sort of recreation quality of that area of the site.
So I've still got a number of members wanting to ask some questions. I've got Councillor Sangster, then it'll be Councillor Cowan, and then Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I want to just reiterate and make a point that two members have already made. I find it incredulous that we're sitting with a developer such as yourself and we're looking at retrospective planning. That's simply not good enough. I'm sorry, it's not. My question around your kind of play area, outdoor gyms. What kind of research have your company done to see if outdoor gyms are actually a popular thing for people to use? What kind of research have you done around the people in the area? Would they want an outdoor gym? Anytime I see outdoor gyms in parks, I don't think I've ever seen anybody on one. I'm going to be honest. So I feel like you're just kind of, let's just put an outdoor gym in there, just to, because we've got things for younger people. And the only thing you've come up with is an outdoor gym. So I'm just wondering if you've got any kind of backup for that or any research that you think that's actually going to be used. Thanks.
We don't have any research in-house. We have taken advice from the manufacturer of play areas such as this. We have sort of seen firsthand sort of councils across Scotland moving to this sort of format of play, whether that's in sort of housing developments or as part of sort of public park offerings. And we our understanding is that they are well used, relatively speaking, but I don't have anything data-wise that I could share with you, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you. I think you'll find manufacturers are going to tell you they're popular, aren't they? Because they're selling it to you. Thanks.
Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. Ms Nelson, I'm pleased to hear that Avant Homes are going to consider looking at further landscaping. What I'm not clear about is, though, are you also going to be looking at the waterlogging in the play park and improving the standards there? So I'm looking for some reassurances that that work is going to be carried out. And as previous councils have raised, what's a consultation will be done with the residents there, so it is appropriate and it is something that they would like to see. And perhaps not for yourself, it's maybe more for the officers. I'd be looking for some kind of guidance on what conditions that we can put in place today to ensure that work is carried out to a satisfactory level by Avant Homes. But if you can just clarify for me if the extra work is going to include the play parks, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. The drainage issue isn't something that I've personally been made aware of. I understand that there may have been conversations between the factor and then between the factor and us. It doesn't sound like it's been resolved particularly well, so I'm happy to take that away as an action for us to go and revisit. Although, and it's fairly typical for housing development, handover happens on a phased basis. We're not sort of washing our hands of any responsibility. If there's something we can go in and fix, perhaps as part of this scope of works, we're happy to do it. The intention is to sort of go to the objectors here in person, offer my contact details, and if they could share some of the details and the photos that they had, I'm absolutely delighted to go and look at it. It isn't Avant's intention to leave play parks or areas of public open space in a waterlogged and unusable condition. So absolutely we'll commit to revisiting that.
Oh, okay, that question has been asked, so straight over to Councillor McGee then.
Aye, thanks. You stated early on, Ken, there's no possible reason to refuse this application. I think that'll be a decision for this planning committee. Ken, we'll decide whether it's going to be approved or no. Just you're saying there that you're going to do something with the drainage in the play area, but there's already been letters, according to the objectors, already been letters sent to the residents that it's now their responsibility. So if Avant has already made that decision, there's not really much you can say here the day that carries any weight that would make it enforceable by the council. Is that not correct?
I think it goes back to my answer previously. Although it's fairly standard for us to hand over things to the factor on behalf of the residents on a phased basis, we're still on the site, and if something's not been delivered to a certain standard, we're happy to go back and do it. I think the opportunity as part of this application will be on site and we'll be doing works in that area. So there is the opportunity to look at a sort of drainage improvement or see if there is some sort of remedial works required to bring it up to standard.
Councillor McGee.
So on that, it says in condition 2, within 1 calendar month of the date of this approval, a detailed programme and timeframe for completion of the approved development. So although this is one part of this whole development, there's lots of things that we haven't done. Completion of the landscape, which you've already agreed. The completion of the play area, which is waterlogged, which you've already agreed. We've got a path that needs to be finished after plot 35 is completed for the path to the school. None of the things have been done. And so I'm just wondering if you're going to give a commitment to make sure that all of those are done.
Yeah, thanks. So my understanding is that all of those outstanding works are controlled by the sort of main planning permission, and so there's timescales associated with that. If you take landscaping, for example, there's a requirement for us to obviously implement the landscaping and then ensure that it's maintained over a certain period of time and then continues to thrive. So that's the commitment from a planning perspective and the sort of enforcement options that this committee would have to take against us if we didn't. But I'm obviously here today and I'm committing to you that it's an important focus for Avant going forward to bring landscaping up to speed, up to scratch, sorry. In relation to the path, again, that's conditioned on the sort of wider permission. There's a requirement for us to deliver that path in line with a certain plot. The difficulty we have just now at the moment is because we're at the sort of latter ends of the development, space is very constrained, and unfortunately the site compound is over where that path would get access to. That'll, over the next few months, that will start to dwindle down, and we'll be able to move that and open that path as soon as possible. Certainly, I think the sort of internal target date is March of next year at the latest. But like I said, that's sort of controlled through the other planning permission rather than this one.
Okay, I don't see any more questions in the room or online. So thanks very much, Mr. Nelson. If we just ask you to return to the public gallery. So members, at this point, I'm going to close the hearing and hand over to Fiona, who's going to address any points raised during the hearing.
Trying to get the mic to work there, sorry. Thank you very much. What we're here to look at today is the parking areas, as detailed in the report, the parking areas at plot 10 and the proposal of the gym at the play area. A lot of the issues that have been raised are out with the terms of this application currently before us, but that's not to say that they're not out with the terms of the planning process. And there's a lot of issues here, I think, that would benefit from our enforcement officers and our case officers discussing with the applicant in terms of the landscaping that's there and the success of the landscaping that's been done to date. And you've heard from Mr. Nelson there. The cairn, and I think we can take that away and do that out with the terms of this application, because what we're here to look at today is what is in your committee report in front of you. But the issues that are being heard before committee about the state of the landscaping, the state of the other matters within the site, the progress of the site are all issues that would be part of the wider planning application. And I think we'll need further discussions. We have already been discussing a lot of these matters with Avant Direct, and these discussions need to continue. That Mr. Nelson is correct, is that we are in the planting season, which I think is between November and March, from my knowledge. Again, not a horticulturalist, but generally. And I think there's an awful lot of opportunity for Avant to do a lot of work with the landscaping. We are aware that a lot of the landscaping in the wider site hasn't been achieved, and I am also aware that some of the landscaping along the structural planting boundary at the very edge of the site, north, if I get my bearings right, is also quite patchy. So there's an awful lot there to be looked at with Avant, out with the terms of this application. The cairn again itself has already been approved. Its detail is at the edge of the play area, close to where I think the original proposal for the cairn was to be originally in the original planning permission. If Mr Nelson wants to bring through revised proposals, revised locations, having spoken to the community, spoken to local ward members, spoken to residents, that's fine. We're happy to look at anything that comes forward. We're happy in that respect to do so. Just in terms of the retrospective nature of the proposal, we were in discussions with the applicant and they were advised that they needed planning permission. Mr Nelson's advised of an internal error as to why the works went ahead. It was actually ourselves that picked up the work from going past the site that the work had been done. We've had discussions with the applicant and the applicant has been made very clear in no uncertain terms that we were not impressed with how the work took place on site round about plot 10. And we advised the applicant that they would have to come up with a scheme around about plot 10 if they weren't able to change the alterations back to what was previously approved. And this is what the applicants come into today. And this is what we have to look at on its individual merits. Just looking at the conditions of the application, if members wish to, we could build in some drainage provision for the outdoor gym equipment, etc., in the vicinity of the play area into condition 2. And I noticed quite a lot of the points were made about the mud and what have you at the play area. Obviously, that's for Mr Nelson to take back and see whether he can do anything about the surfacing at the play area. But the play area is within the red line site, albeit it's not part of the description today. The outdoor gym is part of the description of proposals today, and I'd be quite happy to add in just a condition to make sure that we get a final layout of the surfacing. It is meant to be grasscrete, which is meant to be more standard. It is meant to still look green, but it does have a system within it that allows us to allows it to sort of to look green, but has a bit of a structure to it so that it should be less muddy, etc. So I'm happy just to get a final layout, maybe having the opportunity to discuss with the applicant, but I am happy to see whether we can build in drainage into this area as well and take that forward with the applicant. And the applicant can obviously take back the other concerns that they've got, and I'm happy to discuss anything out with the terms of this application that perhaps should have been done by now or are still to be done, or perhaps landscaping in particular needs to actually be reviewed on site with an enforcement officer and with the case officer or myself to make sure that landscaping is up to scratch through the general site. Happy to answer any other questions. I probably have missed some of the points to yourselves just because of the amount of points that came up, but happy to answer anything that you need me to do. But I think there will be quite a lot for us to take back to the applicant just in the general area of the site. And obviously Mr Nelson has gave you his own commitments today relative to the quality of works on site.
Fiona, at this point, members, I hand over to yourself for discussion, any questions, and then ultimately a decision. So, Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Fiona. Just taking you back to the conditions there. I think we have to have the confidence as a committee to pass this, Jim, and looking at the play park, I don't have that confidence without some really robust drainage conditions going into this. It is disappointing about the retrospective planning permission, that happens, but as my colleague said, doing that when such a large company is disappointing. I think having an enforcement officer on to look at the landscaping should be put into the conditions as well, as suggested by Fiona. So I don't know how my colleagues feel, but I'd like to see some more robust conditioning, and I appreciate what we're discussing is not the play park, but I think the play park has to relate to the gym. We cannot rebuild on poor ground with new equipment. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Maitland, maybe I can give you some comfort on that. We've heard what you've said today. We've heard what the residents have said. Yourselves have been quite vocal in terms of the landscaping there. And as Fiona has said, we will have a meeting in the next 2 weeks with the applicant. Again, the applicant has heard what has been said in terms of the landscaping. I agree with you 100% in terms of the drainage on that. We often come across this because often play areas are put on that area of the site, which isn't good for drainage. So we need to get that sort of resolved. As Fiona said, we can add additional into about the drainage arrangements on that, and we will need to be satisfied those drainage arrangements are adequate before that gym equipment goes in. But also we need to address the existing sort of play areas there as well in terms of the drainage.
Just like to say, I really appreciate that response, but I would like to just add on one more thing, that the play park seems to be for able-bodied children only. Thank you.
That's Councillor Little. I'm going to bring in Councillor McGee, then it'll be Councillor Cowan, and then Councillor Lennox.
Hi, Chair. Well, it's obviously listening to our planning officer, Fiona Finlay, who always gives us good advice. But I think to me, this is a hearing, and the applicant has opened the door to re-look at the play area, because they've now decided to change the original application. So it'd be incumbent upon us, I would say, to have a good look at that. Now, we've already got the fact, and I'm taking it as fact, if the objectors have said they've received letters that the play area is now their responsibility, then we need to be able to make something enforceable here, that play area is going to be sorted, and it isn't the responsibility of the residents until this site is completely finished. Most times when planning committees are sitting in new housing developments, the play area is part of the plan, and there isn't anybody in any of the houses. In fact, some of the houses haven't even got a brick on them. But here we've got the opportunity today to make a change to something the door's been opened for us by the applicant. We can make it a better play area. And I'm not even sure that outdoor gym equipment is the right thing. I think that should be decided after consultation with the residents. What's the point of putting 3 bits of gym equipment that's going to sink into the mud that nobody's going to use in the first place? It might be better for a hopscotch area and a half basketball court or netball court where teenagers and young kids and teenagers could maybe use it. Now, I'm not speaking for the applicants, they might have something different altogether. But as local councillors, myself and Councillor Friel, we can't help but seeing we're inboxes with complaints over the years with this development. Now, I understand that this is one part of this development, but it does open the door to have a real look at the whole development and all the things that haven't been completed. Now, I think it's very strange that we've built their storage site over the part of what a path should be. Half the wains will have left the skill by the time this path is finished. And it was supposed to make it safer for kids to go to the skill. That was my thoughts on it at the time. So I'm concerned about this application. I think we need to add in more conditions to make this enforceable, and we need to make sure we do it the day and do it in the right way. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, and I understand what Councillor McGee has said, and obviously the applicant is here to hear as well a number of the concerns. But going back to what Fiona clearly said, there are a wide range of issues that members have obviously articulated and raised today regarding this wider housing site. The difficulty is they are in relation to the wider housing site. And when I understand completely what you're saying, Councillor McGee, about there being discussion about the play park, obviously what we are talking about insofar as this particular application is concerned is land adjacent to the play park, where they're talking about putting effectively 3 pieces of gym equipment. So while I think there's been discussion about the play park, I'm conscious that the proposed development is about an outdoor fitness area sited alongside the play park. And that then restricts, I think, today what we're considering when the application before you is really in relation to impacts on plot 10 and the land adjacent to the play park. don't get me wrong, I completely understand that there are issues about the wider site and that also includes the existing play park. But clearly, I think as Pamela and colleagues from planning have said, they will pick that up. There will be a meeting arranged, and I think the colleagues in planning are in no doubt of the issues that clearly are at the forefront of members' minds, including yourself, Councillor McGee, to have that meeting. But I think we just need to be careful when considering this application. And I know that no one is suggesting it. I mean no disrespect when I say this, but clearly we have to consider the application before us on its planning merits rather than the issues that are occurring across the wider site. Those issues will clearly be picked up by planning officers, and Pamela has clearly articulated that today. So we have to consider what would be necessary, reasonable, appropriate in terms of the circular on conditions in relation to what is currently before us. And clearly, I've taken on board, certainly Councillor Maitland has clearly suggested we do need to look at the drainage, and that could clearly be added to a particular condition. But I suppose we just need to look at the particular application before us and consider it on its planning merits, and as part of that, consider the conditions and what could be looked to be achieved in that restricted circumstance, but recognise the wider issues will be picked up in terms of the wider consent. And as part of that, I think Fiona and Planning have said planning enforcement officers will also be involved in that wider development review. But for the purposes of this application, it's not necessarily relevant or appropriate.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Craig, for that advice as always. But I just want to go back within one calendar month of the date of this approval, detailed programme and timeframe for completion of the approved development. To me, that the approved development, that statement itself means the development, not just that wee single pair to it. Maybe that's my misreading, or maybe it's just badly written. But I still think we can't do the drainage for the 3 pieces of gym equipment without doing the drainage for the whole play park. And that's what my concern is. My concern is that the applicant is sitting there making commitments that we can't enforce. And I want to make sure that we can enforce what he committed to the day sitting in front of us.
Certainly in terms of what you're saying, is that not giving officers additional work, we could do a report back to planning committee that we have done for other sites in terms of how we have actually progressed with the applicant, and in terms of any additional enforcement action. We like to work with developers, with house builders, so that will be our approach to start with. But if that comes to an end, that we can't make progress, then we will use enforcement action, and it will depend upon what the conditions are on the primary consent. You'll be aware that we are taking a different approach going forward in terms of sort of residential developments coming forward, so that we're not in this situation sort of going forward, but we can't resolve what has went in the past on that. Craig is right, we have to determine what's before us on that. We can tighten up the condition in terms of the wording, that there's no development commenced until we get those details and that we have approve them, and also include the drainage arrangements. But just listening to the discussion in the chamber this morning, it is about the wider issues that this site is being faced, and I don't think it is lost on officers as well, who have been proactive in terms of sort of the issues that residents are facing. We have the applicant, the house builder in the chamber this morning, who has heard that, and will go back, and hopefully then we will start negotiating and speaking to the applicant to get a much better situation within that residential development. So it really is down to members to sort of consider the application before them, but also maybe thinking about coming back, officers coming back with a report to actually outline how we have hopefully resolved the issues that residents on this site are facing.
And I think through you, Chair, just to clarify a point that was raised when we're Councillor McGee, when we the way that proposed condition is worded in terms of the approved development would be, if members were minded to approve, would be really what is before you. So it would be the alterations to the residential plot 10, and it would be in relation to the outdoor fitness area. Just to kind of clarify that.
Thanks, Craig. So I've got Councillor Cowan, then Councillor Lennox.
Thank you, Chair. The conversation's moved on since I first requested to speak, so I'll try not and repeat some of the points that have been made already. I was encouraged by the verbal commitment of Avant Homes to do some further work, and also the further clarification given by the planning officer, but they were verbal reassurances, so I'm definitely an advocate for strengthening the conditions. I was also going to ask about the wording of condition 2, which says that the detailed programme would be submitted for written approval of the planning authority. So my assumption would be that would be done under delegated powers, but obviously Pamela has now come in with the suggestion of a written report for members, so I think that would be helpful. So the one piece that is missing from condition 2 for me, as my colleague Councillor Maitland highlighted, is the drainage, and I accept there's this differentiation between the line where the play park is and the line where the new gym equipment is, but that whole area is waterlogged. Then I think the whole area, the solution will be in the whole area. So I'm definitely an advocate for strengthening the drainage in that condition too, if that can be incorporated. Thank you.
And I think, Chair, if the concern of members is how do we tie down those commitments given by the developer when they were sitting there over there just a short while ago, I think what I would say, and Pamela can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the way that we perhaps pick those assurances up is through the meeting that Pamela has referred to, in the context of the planning conditions that are already there in terms of the site that may or may not already have been discharged, and also look through the planning enforcement review to basically remind and also get those commitments more formalised. But that would be part of that wider discussion by looking at the planning permissions that are already there and what has or hasn't been discharged and what was or was not expected through the discharge of those conditions. So the other thing as well is, for members, the developer has also in the public domain stated those commitments, which, as you know, given the delayed recording, will shortly this afternoon go on to the YouTube and also on the council website. So it's now it will be publicly available shortly to everyone. Those commitments, and an officers clearly with those given in that public sphere, we will be looking to make sure that that is followed through, having regard to the permissions and conditions that are there.
Thanks for that, Craig. Quite happily. Yeah, happy with that, Councillor Cowan.
Just a quick follow-up. So I am quite reassured and confident about the dialogue between the developer and our officers. But if there is opportunities to widen that, to make sure further consultation with the residents takes place, and I'm sure the developer heard the conversation, I'm sure he will pick that up, but also opportunities for the elected members in that ward area to be kept in that communication loop as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Lennox.
Thanks, Chair. Appreciate that we're constantly getting reminded about the fact that some of the issues being raised are out with the scope of this application, but I just need to, I think I just need to go on record as saying that while they are out with the scope, I think they help put things into context. And certainly for a personal perspective, they help me to come to deliberation. The question I was going to ask was probably for planning officers or maybe the enforcement officers. In terms of, had this had the applicant made these changes without planning permission and the application hadn't came before us, what's the mechanism in the background or process that would have ensured that some of the issues that the objectors are raising in regards to this development, what would be the mechanism for ensuring that these were recognised and dealt with from a planning perspective?
That would be really something for the enforcement officer to review as part of the monitoring of the site. We do obviously do some monitoring, and we do as active monitoring as we can. And obviously we are reliant on obviously residents bringing issues to us as well that we might not have noticed. But it certainly would be part of our ongoing review of sites. I don't know whether you wanted to come in there, Pamela, as well.
No, Fiona, I think you've covered that well. It comes from residents, it comes from sometimes the case officer will be out, planning officers, and will pick it up with house builders on that. Sometimes that can be a difficult conversation with them on that, because often they'll have passed that on to the factor, and that's really difficult once it goes to the factor. But I think given the discussion here this morning, I would hope that the house builder event will be amenable to actually resolve this situation.
One thing I think I picked up was that Mr. Nelson said he would be happy to take the residents' contact details, didn't you, Mr. Nelson? I can see him nodding in the back, and that might be the start of that conversation being able to happen. And then obviously ourselves having a meeting with Avant separate to that to pick up the issues. I will be quite honest, it was us that picked up the fact the work had been done. It was actually myself that drove past the site that day and noticed that the work had been done just because I was passing the site. And we do pick up a lot of work that is done that shouldn't have been done. And in this instance, it was us that picked it up through general monitoring and general being out in the area. But certainly Mr. Nelson did commit to taking the gentleman, if the gentleman wished to give them their contact details. I see one of the gentlemen nodding, and that might be the way to start that discussion, and then Avant can come in and meet with ourselves.
Thanks, Fiona. So members, I don't think there's any further questions. So if we at a point where we can come to a decision, so be looking for a proposal, motion to come forward. Yep, Councillor Count.
Could we just have it clarified then? What are the changes that will be incorporated into condition 2?
Okay, bear with me. I'd probably ask for a degree of latitude, members, to allow me to have a think about it, because it's not probably something that I can think about how exactly is the best way to do it, or whether it might be best to actually have a separate condition about the drainage matters. So it's probably one that I would ask for a degree of latitude, if that would be possible, noting that members want us to build in the drainage details, and also perhaps just making sure that the surfacing itself is also appropriate and the path network's also appropriate to that. So maybe getting some further details and specifications in it. But that's so. It's probably one that I would need to have a wee think about. I don't know whether Pamela's wanting to correct me or anything as Chief Planning Officer, but I'd probably want to have a think about it. But I'm thinking probably separate conditions from first thought, but it's something that I probably would need to sit and draft.
Yeah, I think the concern was firstly the timescale of that, whereby it said within a month a detailed programme timescale for completion of the approved development, including the provision of landscaping, shall be submitted on that, and it should be implemented in accordance with the approved programme on that. So what we would be saying is that no development should commence until we get those details and we're happy with them. Like, I have no issue with including drainage arrangements. That's quite clear of what we're after in terms of that condition, and I don't think it's necessary that an additional condition would be required, as well as path details as well on that, by just loading it into that sort of condition.
So that because you're looking for, so you can proposal as amendment to
I would merely ask, yeah,
and include drainage and the path details.
Apologies, Chair, I cut across you there. I would merely ask perhaps members with that knowledge, if you remit to officers to word that condition as part of any decision.
Yeah, Councillor Maitland.
I don't know if you need a second, or it seems that we're all in agreement here.
If you're happy to second it at that point, then okay, then I'm going to bring in Councillor McGee.
Just as long as it's coming back to the committee, as the Chief Planning Officer said,
A report.
the report back, yeah.
That will be a report on the issues that are outstanding in terms of the bigger development, and also we can report on this one as well in terms of how that has progressed.
So is there any other members otherwise minded? So it's approval plus the amended condition too. Yep. All in agreement? Thanks. You just record that, Aileen, thanks.
Yep, for the purpose of the minute, the application has been approved, subject to the report and with the amended conditions.
Thank you very much, Aileen. Well, that concludes today's business, and thanks very much for your attendance.